Hello everyone, this is Kaydub0415, and for Basic Buddhism this week, we're going to look into how does one become a lay follower of the Buddhist path. And for my particular tradition, the Theravada tradition, there's a particular sutta that sort of gives us those guidelines. And I will share that with you in a moment. But as you can see on the agenda, the first bullet point there is the triple gem. So the triple gem, as mentioned in a previous recording, is the Buddha, the Dhamma, and the Sangha. So the teacher, the teaching, and the order of monks and nuns if there is an established order of nuns in a particular region, which I'm not familiar with any established Sangha of nuns, but there used to be in the text you read about it. So it's how to become a lay Buddhist is taking refuge in those in the triple gem. So taking refuge in the Buddha, Dhamma, and Sangha. So that is sort of like one condition of what it means to be a lay follower of the Buddhist path. A second one is abiding by the five precepts, which were discussed in a previous recording. So just a reminder that the five precepts are to abstain from killing living beings, to abstain from taking what is not given, to abstain from sexual or sensual misconduct, depending on your interpretation, to abstain from false speech, which includes writing and also body language, and then abstaining from intoxicating substances such as alcohol. And also in that class would be psychedelics and all that if you are in of a more traditional school of thought, which is sort of where I am at with my practice. I'm more of a traditional practitioner. So I try to abide by that if at all possible. That being said, caffeine is sort of okay. Um, Probably because it takes a lot to get intoxicated for some people, and also because it does boost awareness. But be careful with that, with the heart and blood pressure possibilities. So be careful of that. No, that's definitely permissible. All right, so that's like the first two requisite steps. And then we have a couple additional steps. For example, encouraging others. So the Sutta, which I'm going to bring up in a second, gives sort of guidelines as to how a lay Buddhist addresses others. And I think it's fair to say that the audience for this particular Sutta is a practicing Buddhist, even though they weren't called Buddhists back then. They were called disciples of Gautama, which was one of the Buddha's names. And this is Mahanama, who is asking sort of this question of, what does it mean to be a lay follower? And Mahanama is one of the cousins of the Buddha, and there are a lot of cousins because the Sakyan clan is actually pretty large at this juncture. But the Sutta does give guidelines, so I'm gonna go away actually, and we're gonna go to the Sutta itself. So one second. So this is the Mahanama Sutta, being a lay Buddhist, and this is translated by Kumara Bhikkhu. There is also a translation by uh, Bhikkhu Bodhi that I have, but it's in a book behind me, and I figured it's probably more handy to have this up here so I could put it on the screen. All right, so we've covered the first one, going for refuge to the Buddha, the Dhamma, and the Sangha. And then we talked about it's asking, how is a lay follower virtuous? That's the five precepts. How is, and the question is, how is a lay follower engaged in his own welfare, but not in the welfare of others? So this is important, and you see this sort of formula in other suttas as well. How are we working for the benefit of ourselves but not others? How are we working for the benefit of others but not ourselves? And the Buddha gets asked this question quite a bit in the Pali Canon. So a lay follower is possessed of faith himself, but rouses not others to possess faith or encourage others to have faith. Now, from a modern context, I'm very hesitant to say that's Buddha Dharma. So having faith in the Buddha Dharma, it's having faith in whatever belief system or religion that person is following. So, for example, I have faith in my Buddhist practice, and I would encourage others to have faith in whatever practice they are engaging in. And I I like that sort of interpretation. It may not be the correct interpretation, but I prefer that interpretation because I know that, especially here in the United States, religion is a hot topic, and we don't really want others to feel uncomfortable or angry when it comes to faith. And I think that's definitely my perspective. So I'm not going to say you got to have faith in what I have faith in. It's have faith in what your Dharma is. So if your Dharma is Lutheran Dharma, I have a Lutheran church very close to my apartment, then I encourage you to have faith in that. And then it goes on, is possessed of virtue himself, but rouses not others to possess virtue. So once again, I'm following the five precepts, and I encourage you to follow the precepts that you would follow. And for some people, it's just an ethical code. I encourage you to continue to engage with your ethical code and give your best effort. Is possessed of liberality or generosity, but doesn't arouse that in others. So me being generous with my time or my money, and encouraging others to do the same if they choose to. That's the thing. I'm not going to shame them into it. I want to encourage them, not force them. Is himself desirous of meeting with monks or meeting. It's not just monks. It could also be pastors if you're of a different religion. Basically, meeting with the holy people of your religion or your belief system, or meeting with people that are of similar ethical codes, but rouses not others to meet with those particular people. Is himself desirous of hearing the true Dhamma, whatever that may be. Whenever someone says true anything, I'm like, okay, what exactly is that? But rouses not others to hear the true Dhamma. So that's me wanting to hear about the teachings in my tradition and encouraging others, if they follow a tradition or they follow a particular teaching, to actually go ahead and do that themselves. Is himself habitually mindful of the Dhamma that is heard, but rouses not others to be mindful of the Dhamma. So being aware of the teachings and how they are applicable, and encouraging others to do the same with whatever their Dhamma is. Has himself ascertained the meaning or benefit of the Dhamma that is heard, but rouses not others to ascertain the meaning or benefit of their Dhamma. So, me being able to, with wisdom, decipher sort of the meaning and the benefit of the teachings, and then not encouraging others to do the same thing with their Dhamma is working for my benefit, but not the benefit of others. Having known the meaning and benefit, having known the Dhamma, is himself committed to the practice according to the Dhamma, but rouses not others to be committed to practice according to the Dhamma. So, me being aware of the five precepts, practicing five precepts, taking refuge in the triple gem, and trying to practice virtue, and then not encouraging others to do the same for their Dhamma, that would be me working for the benefit of myself, but not for others. And then, in what ways a lay follower engaged in his own welfare and in the welfare of others. So, one is possessed of faith and rouses others to possess faith, whatever that faith may be. Is possessed of virtue and rouses others to possess virtue, whatever that system is for that particular person. This is the point where I would say, well, according to my tradition, virtue is practicing the five precepts. And then I would be asking, well, what do you have anything similar in your belief system or in your ethical code? And that would open it up for discussion. And then I would say, well, I encourage you to continue to do that and explore that. And maybe together we can make the world seem like it's a little bit better than what the media puts it out to be, for example. Desirous of meeting holy people in their tradition or a similar minded people when it comes to ethical codes and encouraging others to do the same. Desirous of hearing the true Dhamma and rouses others to hear their true Dhamma. And it's basically the opposite of what the previous paragraph had said. Is himself habitually mindful of the Dhamma that is heard and rouses others to be mindful of the Dhamma. Is himself basically has determined the meaning, benefit, the wisdom of the Dhamma that is heard, and rouses others to ascertain that meaning. And I don't really like the traditional translations when it just says himself. Um, Primarily, yes, in these discourses, they're talking to, the Buddha is usually speaking to a man, but I believe that women are equally, if not more, capable of achieving awakening or enlightenment uh, than men are. So, but this is in a culture where men are sort of more in a position of power, especially laws of Manu, and which is some historical context. But I don't want to get into that. I want to continue with this sutta, and then committing to practice of the Dhamma and rousing others to be committed to practicing the Dhamma that they follow. And that is how one engages in their own welfare as well as the welfare of others. So that is basically it in a nutshell. So what does it mean to be a lay follower of the Buddhist path? Taking refuge in the triple gem, the Buddha, Dhamma, and Sangha. Practicing the five precepts as a way of virtuous practice. So, abstaining from killing living beings, abstaining from taking what is not given, abstaining from sexual or sensual misconduct, abstaining from false speech, abstaining from intoxicating substances, if at all possible. And then encouraging others to have faith, encouraging others to practice their Dhamma, whatever that may be. It could be Buddha Dhamma, it could be the various Christian Dhammas, it could be Islamic Dhamma, but encouraging others to practice their own sort of teachings. And I think what it really comes down to is preach what you teach and then put it into action, and be a good role model. So I have faith in the triple gem, and I'm going to show that by being virtuous. And then I'm going to encourage others to try and engage in similar actions, but maybe their Dhamma is a little bit different than mine. Uh, that being said, if the person's Dhamma usually involves violating any of the five precepts, that's when maybe we would say, I don't think that's really a wise thing to do, and here are my reasons. But at the same time, you can't really stop them unless you call the police or something. Um, so that's something that would be a case by case basis. How well do you know the person? Do you think they would ever do that type of thing? So definitely there are some areas where it'd probably be a little bit trickier. And I think one of the biggest concerns that I have with this is the possibility of misinterpretation, that if I'm stating my Dhamma, that I'm trying to convert people, and that's completely the opposite of my intention. My intention is always to inform people and then let them make whatever choices they want to make about it. They can ignore me after that. They can ask me further questions, and ask about a Buddhist practice, whether it might be right for them. But that's something that I try to avoid, is having those sort of misinterpretations. Um, so that's it for this week. The next topic is going to be why meditate. So obviously, meditation is a big deal. It is now a very common practice, even though it was not really during the Buddhist time necessarily. So we will explore that in the next recording. Why meditate? And, how can you meditate? We have a very busy world, so how can we meditate even in a busy world? So until the next recording, everyone, take care of yourselves, and I'll talk to you soon. Goodbye for now.